wine tasting in Santa Margarita. Sip, sip, hooray!
Hi, and welcome to Sip, Sip, Hooray. I'm Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orlin, and we just love to have fun with wine, and we are so glad you've joined us.
We are the podcast that tries to keep it real about the wine industry. Nothing fancy about us, but hopefully the information is good, and we're glad you came along for the ride.
Absolutely. And you might, if you've been listening to some of our podcasts lately, you might think that we just like hanging out in Paso Robles. And, well, we do.
It's a really fun town with a lot of great wine.
And we met one winemaker who's just fantastic. We kind of fell in love with him and his place, and he's realized his dream. He came up to Paso from Los Angeles and, you know, with no experience making wine, a strong interest in farming, and I think he was making wine a little bit at home. He discovered this amazing property and just fell in love with it and decided this is it.
The winery is called Kukkula, and that is not a cuckoo name. It's actually Finnish, and Kevin Jussila is Finnish as well, and so it's an homage to his homeland. It means the high place, and when you go to the winery, you'll see that it is on a hill, and it's just absolutely spectacular. We were thrilled to get to sit down with Kevin, taste some of his wines, and have a chat with him in his barrel room.
In his barrel room, which is in the winery, he built by hand. And when I say built by hand, he moved like boulder by boulder by boulder, this amazing rock wall that came straight out of his vineyard that he planted. He's just a jack of all trades. Amazing that he's a designer, builder, winemaker, all-around cool guy.
Yeah. We are in the tank room at Kukkula Winery with Kevin Jussila, the owner and vintner here, and we are so delighted to be here. It's a beautiful spot west of Paso Robles in the
Adelaida district,
right.
One of the 11 AVAs in Paso Robles.
Right.
So, Kevin, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Kippis.
And
what did you say?
That's kippis. It's cheers in Finnish.
Kippis. I like
Yes.
it. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Driving out here was a spectacular. It's a piece of paradise out
Yes.
here. My eyes were watering. It was so beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, really, truly gorgeous.
Yeah.
And you have found a little slice of heaven out here.
Yeah,
How
definitely.
did you end up out here?
Okay, well, as short form as possible, I was making wine in my home in Topanga Canyon, Southern California, which led to me wanting to plant grapes. And before I actually purchased grapes, I had taken a trip with my wife to Provence in the mid-90s. And one of the places, my wife and I are really into food and wine. And so kind of the core of the mission, and we had our oldest daughter, who was 10 months old at the time. So we wanted to kind of have a lot of fun and explore Provence, but do it in a way that's convenient with a little kid. And so we would do day trips, and that was really kind of well, we set up the trip because of this article that was in the Los Angeles Times travel section that really kind of mapped out traveling with young kids and using a hub as a way to kind of explore wherever it is you're taking a vacation. And so we rented that very same house. And one of the stops that we made in Provence, one of the wineries we visited was Beaucastel, which is in the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and certainly one of the seminal wineries in the Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And one of the patriarchs of Beaucastel was actually pouring wines for us, and found out that I was making wine at our home in Topanga, and I wanted to plant, and he told us about his project, his joint project with the Haas family, which of course today is Tablas Creek, and they're one of the anchor wineries in Paso. They're one of the really kind of the major catalysts for Rhone winemakers in Paso. And anyway, within a week of that trip, I came here, and it was my first time to really explore Paso, and I was smitten the first time, which just kind of led to this, as my wife says, hobby that got carried away.
It's a big hobby, Kevin.
Oh, it's a huge hobby. Yes.
But I can understand why you'd be smitten with this place.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely beautiful, tucked into this canyon.
Right.
And there's rolling hills. Your house is actually up on a hill overlooking the winery and vineyards.
Right. Well, in fact, Kukkula means the high place in Finnish, so it's apropos for where the house sits. So
Finnish.
And I Finnish. Yeah. So my parents, my dad grew up in Finland. He emigrated to Canada in his 20s. Back in the early 50s, and my mom, who is Finnish but grew up in Canada, her family immigrated before she was born. She grew up in a Finnish enclave or outside of a city called Sudbury, which is 300 miles north of Toronto, which is where I'm from. So half of my Finnish family is in Canada and half of my Finnish family is in Finland. And in fact, Finnish was my first language. I learned English when I was 5 when I moved to this country.
And you still speak Finnish?
Well, I'm conversant. I'm not fluent.
Give us a little something.
Mitä sinä haluat minä sanoa? What do you want me to say?
It sounded really great.
I've already forgotten how to say cheers.
Yeah, kippis. Yes. Well, there's an even harder way to say it. It's hölliken gulliken. You did it perfectly. Awesome.
It's sort of like, hello, good looking, or something like that.
Yeah.
Good looking.
Somebody suggested I make a label with that name, but imagine an American trying to say that.
Well, I like the way you taught us how to pronounce your last name.
Yes. So my alma mater is UCLA, and my last name is Jussila. So Jussila. How's that for cool? So I got a real quick aside if this is of any interest. I was born Jussila. We became citizens in this country when I was 16. My dad was Otto Hjalmar Jussila. Otto is obviously the name of one of my wines. And Otto, Aatto, changed his name to Otto, Otto, Johnson. Jussi means John, sort of in Finnish.
Okay.
So I became Kevin Johnson for a number of years. So when I went to UCLA, I never made the connection. This is the funny part. UCLA, Jussila. So
you were doing Johnson.
And I was doing Johnson. And so when we had our daughter, I was 36. So it was certainly years after UCLA. And it just dawned on me one day when somebody, because everybody always has a problem saying my last name, they just really mess it up. And I said, it's, like UCLA, Jussila. And I thought, oh my God, that's my alma mater. How come I never thought of that? That's funny. So anyway, divine intervention, I guess.
What's in a name? I love it.
Yeah.
We're not going to forget how to say it.
No, there you go. You better not. There's no excuse now.
So from Provence, Topanga Canyon, and Paso Robles. You went to school at UCLA, but not for enology.
No, I graduated with a degree in economics, and I did and still do to this day. I manage money at Merrill Lynch. I'm a financial advisor.
You do both?
I do both. Yeah, I have to pay for this mess called a winery. So,
wow,
yeah,
the mess you got yourself into.
The mess I got. My hobby gotten carried away, yes.
So how do you go from managing money to making wine and making a wine that ends up on Wine and Spirits top 100 list?
Dumb luck. Look, I'm a serious. When I dig into something, my wife is really right. I don't understand the meaning of a small hobby. When I'm passionate about something, I really, really dig in, and it's just the way I'm wired. And I've got kind of OCD perfectionist tendencies. So I'm not sure that I've necessarily arrived yet, but we're getting a lot of traction. So I don't know what the answer is. A lot of hard work.
So did you have a vision or a dream before you started this project?
Of doing a project like this, or this specific project,
this
or what?
Specific project, or
Well, for years, yeah. I mean, this gets back to when I first started making wine in the early '90s. That I knew I was kind of getting sucked in, and
you felt it.
Oh, it was impossible to pull back. I was stuck in the vortex. I think my toe was already in. And so my wife and I had talked about this really relatively seriously for a number of years, but it was always in the context of when the last goes to college, who, by the way, is going to college this September. And I'll be 60 in October, so thank God I didn't wait until now, because knowing what I know, this is 15 years since the inception of this project. I love the business, but it's a brutally tough business, and the lead time before you get anywhere, I feel like we're just getting there now, is call it 15 years, especially the way we did it, with the infrastructure, owning the vines and the facilities and, direct to consumer. And,
you built this from the ground up. This building was not here. Vineyards were not
This
here.
whole property was a walnut orchard when I first drove up to it. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I was going to say is, with respect to the drive and how beautiful it is, the first time my wife and I saw this property was in October in the fall, and it was one of those seminal falls. And if you've ever seen walnut trees when they're with fall colors, they are just a spectacular, I can't even describe the color, yellow-orange, but they're just intense color, and it's just, the hill is blanketed with them. And so our property is very mountainous, and it's just covered, and at that point was really covered in walnut trees. So the first time we ever drove up to it, it was just buried in fall colors. And when I drove up, it was a couple weeks later when I actually came up and had the courage to maybe address whether or not I would be seriously entertaining buying this property, because it was, initially I thought it was just way too big a project to do. So the real estate broker was smart enough to have me come up there because he knew what a sucker I would be, I guess. And I drove up to the top where our house sits today, and my heart was just pounding out of my chest. I just thought, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I have to have it. So the rest is history. It's all downhill from there.
You did it though. So many people, want to do something like that, but whether it's resources or courage, they don't necessarily get there. So congratulations for
Thank
getting
you.
there.
Naivety will get you everywhere.
And as Harry said, you're making beautiful wines.
Yeah, thank you.
So from a guy who started in your garage, where did you start?
Yeah, I started in my basement, my home in Topanga. Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious how you learned, how you developed a
Self-taught.
palate. How did you?
I jokingly tell people I drink a lot. Which is true, I suppose, right? But
that's the best way to learn.
No, yeah. Well, how do you know unless you taste the product, right? But I'm a pretty analytical guy, and I think I have a pretty good palate. I know I have a really good palate. I've had really good olfactory capabilities, and I think that it's like when we sat down, I still smell a slight mustiness in here. I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from.
And I smell nothing.
Yeah,
which tells you about my palate.
Well, maybe not your palate, but certainly the olfactory component there, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if my wife has a sponge on the sink and it's a little bit rancid because it hasn't been washed in a while, I'll smell it immediately, and it drives me crazy. So I don't know. How does that lead to good winemaking? I guess I've got a good palate. I'm really an analytical guy, and I'm serious about what I do. So I taught myself over 26, 27 years to make wine, I guess.
I think it shows in blending, because you really need to have that olfactory sense to do really good blends.
That's right. Well, I mean, look at food, the same story, right? What makes food so good is the complexity of the things that go into food. But food isn't as good if you can't really have a really good sense of smell. And it's the same thing with wine. Wine is a component of the meal, and it's all about the smell and the taste.
Speaking of the taste, one of the things that I think goes into making your wine so special is the way you're farming your grapes. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
because you put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah, well, everybody puts effort into it, but
it's not mass produced.
It's not mass produced, but specifically where we differ from a lot of people, and it seems like there's maybe just because it's in my neighborhood, I'm starting to see it crop up a little bit more. We're dry farmers, and we're organic dry farmers. So for those that don't know what dry farming is, it literally means dry farming. We irrigate nothing. We rely 100% on rainwater.
So you don't have any irrigation system?
No, but actually, interestingly enough, we are. I don't think we talked about this when you walked up, but there's a number of blocks of vines that have been taken out, and we're dealing with a lot of wineries. We're dealing with an issue called red blotch, which is a virus that is unfortunately it doesn't kill the plant, but it affects the quality and the yield of the plant. So much so that I can't take a risk and ruin what good name I'm creating here. So we're aggressively replanting all of this. So, even though it's just kind of a scary process and it's going to cost us a lot of money and a lot of time to do it, I'm not going to back off on the quality of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, what our goal is. But this whole thing has actually given me an opportunity to kind of rethink some things too. And so one of the things that is a prevailing theme in the last 10 years, 9 years particularly, I guess, is drought. And we've had 7 out of 9 years of drought. And so I am not one of those naysayers about global climate change. It's real, guys. And I think that it's going to be more the norm, the drought environment, than it is going to be rainy environments. And so one of the things I've decided to do, and I've actually already implemented it on my first block that I've replanted, is I did put an irrigation system in. Now, it's funny because it really was hard for me to come to terms with that, because it's like almost, it's almost criminal, you know? I preach dry farming, organic dry farming. But what I realized was having an emergency or a backup system in case isn't a violation of where you want to be or where you want to go, but rather a way to have a fail-safe if things get sufficiently ugly. And the other side of the coin that's more important ultimately is the economic viability of what you do. And this is a huge expenditure for us, for anybody in this business. So what we will do is I've changed the density of planting from 370 plants per acre to 870 plants per acre, so it's more constant. Wow. Mm-hmm. It's more plants per acre. Part of that is to devigorate the plant, which would be helpful, because if you're tighter, you want to make sure your canopy isn't just going to be a huge bush.
And does that mean the plant doesn't need as much water?
No, it really doesn't mean that the plant doesn't. I mean, well, yes. I mean, the surface area of the root structure, by virtue of the area that it's allowed to grow, means that plant is going to it's going to be a smaller plant and need less water. But the aggregate use of water for the acre probably doesn't change a whole lot, I guess, is one way to put it. But I don't plan on using the water other than in the winter. Mm-hmm. And so what I will be is essentially the reserve. I will create the reserve if we're deficient in the reserve requirements by the time we have bud break. Yep. A good example is a year ago we had 5 inches by the 1st of March. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, that scared me. I mean, we've gone through some 10-inch years, which weren't fun, and 17 and 18-inch years, which for a lot of people is a lot of rain, but for us it's almost half yet of what our average is. We're, I think, historically about 28 inches average. And at that point I was thinking, oh my God, if it doesn't rain after the 1st of March and we have 5 inches, then what? Mm-hmm. And how much pressure does that put on the vineyard, especially when you have issues like red blotch or other potential viruses, in terms of stressing and exaggerating, amplifying the problem? So I've decided that I put the water system in, and if we have a deficit situation by the end of February, 1st of March, I will add those reserves to the soil. Once we have bud break, then it's dry farm through the year.
So it's your fail-safe.
It's the fail-safe, yeah.
It just goes to show you that it's agriculture, it's farming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work, a lot of detail that goes into it that ultimately gets the grapes into the bottle.
That's right.
And it's not an easy thing. It's certainly an expensive thing. And we were talking earlier about how some people think, we're in the wine industry, we're just, having a great life, drinking wine all day.
Yep.
It's not as glamorous as it looks.
Oh, there's more in the trenches than in the clouds, that's for sure.
I like that expression. All right, but the organic farming, philosophically, why is that important to you?
Well, I've just always been somebody who in our family, we just practice eating well, food that isn't full of, everybody eats food that, has some amount of preservatives. But to the extent possible, we eat all, we're part of the CSA for all of our vegetables, and we have been for many years. And it's just philosophically how we eat. We just want to eat really healthy food. And so making wine, the product that goes into it, I want to make sure that there's nothing in the way of pesticides, herbicides that are on that plant. How much does that impact you, from a health perspective? I don't know, but I don't want to find out. So I just thought that it was just kind of a natural thing to do. And it's interesting, I didn't really come here to be a dry farmer, by the way, but the more I thought about it as I kind of developed, I spent about a year after I bought this property and moved up here, a plan. Who are we going to be? How are we going to approach this? And once I discovered dry farming and realized, wow, we can do this. We got heavy clay, and we got porous rocks, and we get sufficient rain. In spite of the drought environment, on average, we have more than we need. to me, organic farming is a natural extension of dry farming, or is it the other way around? There's one.
We are copacetic.
Yeah, right. It's a natural evolution. The whole idea of dry farming is, kind of being a good steward of your land, right? And so why not be a good steward of your land by growing stuff without pesticides and herbicides?
I love it.
Yeah.
So one thing we noticed when we were walking up to the winery is that there's several walls of lots and lots of rocks.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I'm a bit of a student of architecture. I'm a frustrated architect. There was a time I wanted to be an architect. Probably still would like to be an architect, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And so I've collected a lot of architecture books over the years, and particularly modern architecture. I love modern architecture. And so it was a combination of, I just daydream about, I've built all the homes that I've been in. And so I'm always dreaming about the next project, which scares my wife, because I do want to do another one or two before I leave this planet. So she's probably freaking out if she hears this interview.
It's not done yet.
No. Oh, I'm definitely not done yet. So I've always had, what's the next dream project? What's the next dream project? This was like really the dream project. I mean, the scale of what we've done is far bigger than anything I've ever done. And so on this one, I really wanted to approach it with a modern aesthetic. And the whole Finnish aesthetic is very modern as well. So it's kind of a natural. Yeah, is it in my DNA, or is it just something that because I'm a Finn, I got to be? I don't know. But I really love the modern aesthetic. And so, interestingly enough, during the beginnings of this, thinking about doing this project, I already knew of an architect in Aspen. His name is Scott Lindenau, and his firm is called Studio B Architects. This is a plug for Scott. Shameless plug. Anyway, he was pretty good friends with one of my clients in my private wealth management business at Merrill, who has a home in Aspen. And he dripped on me a few times before leading up to this project that I should talk to Scott. He does some really cool stuff. And I had seen some of Scott's work on, there's an HGTV thing on his house in Aspen, and they maybe had met home in Western Design or Western Interiors, I think it's called. And we really liked what he did. And so I finally called him up, and he loved the idea, and he was really he's just exploded in his business, but he was kind of stuck in Aspen, and so he just thought this would be a killer way to kind of branch out. And so he was kind of at the beginning of his ascent when we hired him, so the timing was really good. So how did that lead to the facade? So I had seen a whole bunch of examples of the Gabion structures in architectural books over the years, and I really liked it. So I forget if he brought it up or I said, I really like this idea. Oh yeah, it's called Gabion, Gabion. And so I think historically it was always used for like riverside erosion control and mountain erosion control, that kind of stuff. And then it over time became used for kind of landscape kind of architecture, and then ultimately houses and structures for not really structural, but for aesthetic and maybe thermal mass reasons. So somehow we started talking about it and ultimately incorporated it in the building. He actually suggested I do it in our house, and I said, well, that'll be a little too industrial. Yeah. So our house is full of rock. It's just as much rock, but it's in this kind of an old world, kind of what we call a sloppy grout with a lot of kind of aggregate in it. So it feels like an old world wall in a modern house with lots of glass, like our winery. So, but in this case, I thought, God, it would look really cool in the winery because it's industrial. And so why not show off that industrial aspect of it?
And are these local rocks? And
it's all off my property.
For people, so you can't see this through the podcast.
We'll have a photo on the website.
Yeah, and it's just a bunch of rocks inside a metal grating, right? Like
it's just why am I drawing a blank? It's a galvanized. Well, they're not really. What's the word I'm looking for? A bag or a box of meshed wire, but they're like panels that they're put together by spring wires that are just like these coils that you spin at the intersection of all the panels. Okay. And so I kind of built these panels into these boxes, and then secure the boxes to the wall, fill the boxes. They're not really boxes, right, because there's a flexibility to them, but fill the boxes with stone, and then just kind of build it up from there. So
beautiful. It's a fantastic effect.
When you say you filled them, did you do it yourself?
Oh yeah, I built the wall. Yeah.
Come on.
Seriously, yeah.
That's unbelievable. These are massive.
Yeah,
And
you
there's a lot
have
of
to
them.
see this to really appreciate, because I figure there's about 250,000 pounds of rock on that
Wow,
wall.
you are OCD.
I am OCD.
That's insane.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you,
impressed,
and I
actually.
built that. I built the stone walls, the gabion walls, in July and August, which is like the hottest time of year. And I remember thinking as I started out in the far corner of the building, so that if I screwed up, at least it wouldn't be so obvious, or I could take it apart easily, and nobody would notice. And then I kind of, as I felt courage, I kept moving this way to toward the tasting room, where it's more and more visible to the visitor. And I really realized very fast that it was actually relatively simple, but it's a very arduous task. And so it took me 2 months, and then there was this whole period that when I was building, it was like, oh my God, there's this massive rock wall, and this is going to look like this is kind of a monolithic mess here. And it's like, what am I doing? I sure hope this works out. But what was really interesting, as I got higher and higher with it, it actually pulled, a structure at the highest point is 26 feet high. So it's a fairly sizable, massive building. But as you know, the backside is buried. It's 12 feet underground, and the sides are tapered. And so the building kind of is diminished by its being somewhat submerged in the hillside. And so although the walls on the north face, which is where the gabion is really massive, it had you tell me if you disagree, but it feels like it pulls it down. It actually makes it part of its place. So it became more cohesive with its environment once it was finished.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Sure.
It feels a part of this place.
Yeah, it definitely fits in.
Oh, cool.
To the hillside.
Well, especially since it's rock right off. I mean, I dug it from the hills right behind the building, right? So
All right. So
it belongs here.
So you built houses, you built the winery. Let's talk about your wine. You've got a couple bottles here.
Cool. Actually, we got 3 bottles.
Yeah, you poured a white for us
Tempt you.
here.
Yeah.
What is this?
I've already drunk mine. So, see, I'm good at drinking and talking. This is why I own a winery. No, I'm good. So we only make one white, and the white is called Valea. And, did I say Kukkula means the high place?
Yes.
Okay, I forgot. I just want to make sure that we didn't forget that. Valea is another Finnish word, and it means fair, blonde, or bright.
And this is.
Yeah. It is blonde and it's bright. Yeah.
Nice, fresh and crisp,
Yeah.
refreshing.
Yeah, so that's Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, Viognier in that order. And as I recall, I don't have the bottle here in front of me, it's 43% Grenache Blanc, 29% Roussanne, and 28% Viognier.
I like the acid balance in it. It's
Thank you.
really nice.
Thank you.
Not, some whites I get scared are going to be a little sweet, and this is just lovely and crisp and.
Thanks. So we, in our wines in general, we try to be really finesse and elegant in what we do. In our reds, we only do our reds in French oak, but in our whites and our rosé, we only do it in stainless steel. I pick the grapes early, 22.5, 23 bricks kind of territory, so they're not going to be big alcohol wines. And I ferment them, and I do this what I call a progressive field blend, because they're picked at different times. It's not really a true field blend, but I pick it, press it, put it in one of these tanks that's right behind you here. And then a couple weeks later, let's say the Viogniers first, I'll pick, press, and add the Grenache Blanc, and then I'll pick, press a few weeks later, and add to the blend that I've already created. So they're all kind of fermenting together, and I keep a chiller on it so that I keep it in the mid 50s, so that even if it's fermenting, it's just percolating. It's not really getting crazy fast. And I think that serves 2 purposes. One, it allows me to co-ferment to a large degree, number one. But number two, I think when you keep your temperatures cool for a long period of time, you really retain the freshness, the fruit, the acidity of the wine. And we don't let it go through malolactic fermentation, so it doesn't have that kind of roundness that you get when wines go through malo. And we do native yeast.
So what do you like about being a winemaker?
It's funny. It's hard to answer. I love wine. I really love wine. My kids, the other night, one of my boys was home to visit for a few days, and he said, "You just can't go a night without your wine, can you?" I was like, "No, sorry, I can't." I love wine. So first and foremost, I love wine. I'm really curious about wine, and I am an analytical guy, and when I get into something, I really get into it. So I just got sucked in. But it goes beyond that. I built all my homes, and I love building things. So I think the stuff that really turns me on is ultimately the physical manifestation of my work. If I can have a building, I can have a vineyard, I can have a bottle of wine in my hand, to me, that's just really, it's palpable. It's like I've done something. I've left a mark or something. How much you've made it? I mean, you could be a failure and do some really cool stuff, but
you
I made it. Oh, there you go. Yeah, okay, there you go.
I think you made it in the other sense of the term as well, but I'll leave that there. But you handcrafted it.
That's right.
You created something.
And I'm a real. I love art. I love music, and I'm neither an artist. I shouldn't say I'm not artistic. I suppose I am on some level. This is art. Right?
This and the glasses art.
Well, and just the aesthetics of the building and all that stuff. I suppose there's a component of art, but I'm not an artist. I'm not a musician. I'm envious of people that can do that. It's just creating something from nothing, and that's the ultimate expression of creating something from nothing. So I guess it's really that. I love being outdoors. I've worked with a suit on for most of my career, and, it's been a wonderful career. But the end game is this, and this is the kind of stuff that really turns me on. When we were making wine in Topanga Canyon, we actually had a commercial label there for about 5 years, and we sold 60 cases or so of our product from the vineyard there. And I would have a wine release party always around June while we were there. And I remember one night, it was just a beautiful sunset evening at our home in Topanga Canyon, and we overlooked the ocean in Topanga, and it was a killer place to be. And so some guests were leaving, and I was standing at the deck overlooking our the property, and we probably had a few drinks of wine, so I was feeling very philosophical. And somebody was commenting to me about how beautiful it was here, and I kind of reflected there, and I said, I've been really successful in my career, and I can't say that I'm really happy. And I do nothing but throw money down the drain in this winery, and I totally dig it. What is wrong with me? So I don't know. Ask a winemaker why they like making wine or why they like being a winemaker. I think it's in your DNA.
And you also, the buildings you build, they're for you.
Right.
But you get to hand people this bottle. They can take it home. They can have an experience. They can have memory.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's really certainly one of the rewards of making wine, aside from getting great reviews, is really the feedback you get from the customer. I get emails and calls and even letters written to me sometimes about, I just had a bottle. Invariably I get pictures, in a text or an email. They send me a picture, and it's their honeymoon in Tahiti or something, and they brought a bottle of Kukkula with them, and they're telling me what a special evening it is. It's like, oh wow, that is really cool.
So you probably don't have time to be on the road selling your wine.
Oh, I am, sure.
You do that too?
Well, I just got back from Finland a week ago. We rolled out our wines in Finland, and I'm.
How do you manage that with the money managing?
No sleep.
Yeah,
no sleep.
That's so overrated.
You sleep when you die, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't do a lot of travel with respect to that, but a lot is a relative term. If I had to summarize, how much am I on the road selling wine, it might amount to, at this point, 6-8 weeks out of the year. It's not a huge part of the year, but it is becoming a bigger part. I mean, I'm almost all direct to consumer, so I am distributing in Finland, which is a little unusual. I have a little distribution in Southern California. I have a little distribution.
What do you mean by direct to consumer?
Oh, that says I don't have a distributor for the most part. I sell really through the tasting room. So 95% of our sales are essentially through the tasting room or online orders from our website and or club, which of course is typically derived from people that visit us. So 75% of our total business is roughly wine club. So I don't do a lot of distribution, but the realities of this business too are that, especially running two careers, if I'm ever to have just one career, it'd be kind of nice to launch Kukkula a little bit faster. And so that kind of means raising awareness by making more people have the bottle in their hands, and distribution is the natural way to do it. And so I am pushing on that pedal, but I'm trying to do it in a really selective way. Finland, obviously, it's my homeland. So I really want to be in Finland.
Sure.
Yeah, and it was really, really fun.
Were they receptive?
Oh, it was a huge reception. Yeah, I was beyond thrilled. It was a lot of fun.
And it wasn't just relatives.
No, it wasn't. Oh, that's so funny. So I did do 2 dinners, and there was 20 plus people. So it wasn't a huge attendance at each of the dinners, but it was, I think, a week and a half or 2 notice. We didn't really, they didn't really get the word out fast enough. But we had 20 some guests at each of the 2 dinners, and I think at one dinner there were 4 relatives, and the other there were 6. So yeah, but I kind of chalk that up to I'm a good networker, right? And it was actually friends of friends even in the United States. So in fact, somebody from Stockholm came to the dinner in Helsinki. So I was actually able to attract people in Finland to come to my dinners. But
international draw.
It was pretty cool.
You'll just have to go back and do it again.
Well, they're talking about me going back in December to do some winemaker dinners and some presentations. So if we can get a couple, 3 of them, maybe 3 or 4. Together, I would definitely go back for that.
What a fun way to honor your parents.
Oh yeah,
That's
for
really,
sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have 3 children.
I got 3 kids. Yeah.
And they're 22.
24 is the oldest. 22 and 17. Yes. Yeah.
And do you see any of them following your footsteps
No.
in the? No.
I mean, hey, anything's possible. I started this business when I was 45, so you never know. But
yeah.
I'm also an old dad. I'll be 60, like I said. My youngest is 17, and so you have to think about this in realistic terms. In 10 years, I'll be 70. If there's no real sense that somebody has a real interest, any of them have a real interest in this, then I'm not sure I'm going to hold my breath any longer. But my 2 oldest kids are really seriously in the sciences, and they're just taking off in their careers, and I can't see them doing this. And my youngest is starting college and is a computer science geek, so I wouldn't hold my breath.
Well, I love how fun that you can celebrate what they're into and cheer them on, as opposed to saying, no, I need you down here. And I love that. You want them to find their passions. Well,
that's right. Yeah, it's the mantra I've had for my kids has always been figure out. They hate it when I say it this way because they think what turns you on is I don't know, is such an old, it's a 60s, 70s say. But I say figure out what turns you on and figure out how to make money doing it. Right? It's the passion first, and then is it economically viable? If being an artist isn't economically viable, well, maybe you can figure a way to kind of leverage that, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I want my kids to pursue their passions.
And this other wine we have on the table.
Oh, we didn't pour the others.
Oh, and this is an homage to your father.
Oh,
yes.
Speaking of family,
yeah, and actually this is the 15 Octa, which is gone.
Which is the wine that was named in the top 100
by Wine Spirits.
Yes, and got a 93 point.
Yes, yeah, I was thrilled. It was unexpected that I got this.
How did you find out about it? How did you?
They emailed me.
Yeah.
And I thought I was reading it wrong. I read it like 3 or 4 times, and then I sent it to our marketing people, and I said, "Is this what it's saying? Is this saying what I think it's saying?" They said, "Oh my God, yeah!"
That's so cool.
It was very cool. So we were pretty thrilled.
You like the Nobel,
Yeah, well, it's a pretty high honor, but it's not that high. All right, so yeah, Atto is my father's name, Aatto, and Atto means Eve. My father was born on Christmas Eve.
Oh.
And Joulu Atto is Christmas Eve. Yeah, and so my dad was a Joulu Atto baby. And this is an unusual blend. It is 48% Counoise, 38% Mourvedre, and 14% Grenache. And it's really an exotic wine. I like all my wines, but there's something very unusual about this. It's exotic. It's baking spices. It's kind of like an old world Pinot funk to it. It's very elevated spiciness, but a really kind of a voluptuous aromatic to it.
Wow, it is. It's very different, and it's very appealing.
This wine has been sold out now for the top 100 happened in November, so it's sold out by December. It is a really voluptuous wine. I mean, it's one of those wines where it almost makes your eyes kind of like spin in the back of your head, kind of going, "Wow, what is going on here?" It's a spectacular wine.
Ooh, that makes me do the happy dance.
Oh, you have a winner if Mary Orland's going to give you a happy dance. Oh, that's really great.
I'm loving this
Really
wine.
nice.
Yeah. Whoops.
So what are you pouring for us now, Kevin?
This is the 15 Pas de Deux. And Pas de Deux? What's a Pas de Deux?
It's a ballet move.
There you go. It's a dance for two, a step for two, right? And I call it Pas de Deux because it's Grenache and Syrah. And I think that Grenache and Syrah in this glass are dancing beautifully together.
I love that.
So thus the name. Not a Finnish name, but I think it's apropos. And this is a 6634 blend of Grenache and Syrah.
This has a beautiful floral nose.
Yes, a very kind of floral, herbal, earthy quality to it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Like some sage and
Very definitely a sage, kind of a mint. There's a little bit of it's not coming out right now, but a bit of a creme de mint kind of a flavor and aromatic to it.
Ooh, that's really lovely.
it's just beautiful on the palate. It's soft and velvety.
I was going to say
Yes.
velvety for
Yes.
sure. That's really nice.
But it's got some nice grippiness, but not too much,
too much.
right?
Let's-
Nice mid-palate
Lets you
spiciness.
know the wine is there on your tongue.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of layers happening with it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And the varietals you make, is that because of where you are, or are these just favorite wines? Like, how did you choose what?
Yeah, I've got a bit of maybe a bias to Rhone varietals, but I drink wines from all over the world, so it isn't like I love Rhones and nothing else. I love lots of wines, and if I could make a whole bunch of other varietals, I would. But I believe, and certainly Toblis is here because of their belief, and other people of significance who have come here 10, 15, 20 years earlier than me, that this is really, genuinely amazing Rhone country. There's a fair amount of debate between Bordeaux and Rhone, and there's some people who are making great examples of some Bordeaux's here. I've got a good friend who's starting a project, he's well into it, and he's just rolling out his first wines, and they're exceptional in their Bordeaux blends. So I know you can make amazing Bordeaux's here, but you've probably both been to the Rhone region.
I have.
This looks like the Rhone region.
It does.
It feels like the Rhone region. It's a very, very similar terroir, and same soil that really kind of.
It's the soil, really, that's key.
Well, I think it's a lot of things.
It's
Yeah,
a
but
lot
we
of things. And then it's the temperatures. It's
Right. It's a combination of everything, that which encompasses the terroir, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about it. I'm again a self-taught winemaker, so I can't really speak to this in any specificity. But you hear a lot about the calcareous soils, the limestone, and it creates stress, which creates more intense fruit and therefore wine. And I believe it. I mean, there is an intensity, and I think it's
farming.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I believe that there is even more intensity because of the dry farming.
Yes.
But there's some debate about that. I've read some about that, and science sort of says that you can't really bring the minerality of the soil up into the fruit. I'm not sure I believe that, but how can I argue with these guys? So, but I really feel it. There's the wines I make from my property. There's a real signature to them, and I think that's really defined by this kind of limestone, calcareous soils. And
I think that's part of the fun about wine, too. I mean, it's just, some of these things. How do you explain that mineral note?
Yeah.
How do you explain this or that
how do you do
taste?
this? Yeah, I don't know. It happens.
It's not like you put it in the glass. It's just there after fermentation.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the magic of wine.
Right.
Well, as a guy who is a self-taught winemaker and who did this on the side and continues to kind of do it on the side, what advice or words of warning maybe would you give other people listening who want to do it too?
All right, so my quick answers are, many years ago, I don't even really know Brian Babcock, but I used to bug Brian Babcock when I was in Los Angeles, and I was starting to do this because in Los Angeles there's nobody to talk to, and
He's
somehow
a winemaker in Santa Barbara County.
that's right, San Ynez area,
Yep.
and he's exceptionally successful at what he does, and he probably won't even remember this, but it's got to be 25 years ago, and somehow I was picking his brain probably for the 5th or 10th time, And he made a comment to me. He said, "Okay, just stay where you're at. This is the perfect size, just a hobby. Don't get serious about this business." So is that my advice? On some level, yes. This is a seriously tough business, and you darn well better love it, because it is really, really a difficult business. So, I think you know who you are. If you can't help yourself, you better do it, because you'll regret it. I guess that's my advice, Go for what turns you on, what I told my kids, right?
And maybe find a mentor like you had in Brian.
Yeah, well, he wasn't so much I suppose he was to some extent, but yeah, I probably felt guilty after bugging him too many times. But I've had lots of really
Did you have any mentors as you were learning?
Yeah, I've had lots of mentors. There's she's become a good friend of mine, Helen Keplinger Wines up in Napa area. She's an exceptional winemaker. She's gotten huge reviews.
And she makes her own varietals too.
That's right, yeah. She makes cab as well,
yes, she does.
but she's focused on Rhones as well. Tasha Boffman was introduced to me by Helen Keplinger, and Tasha's here local. And
I don't know Tasha.
Yeah, Tasha's actually worked for years for Meridian, a corporate structure, and she's starting her label called Concur now, but a really good winemaker. Stefan Aseo at L'Aventure. Super helpful.
It's neat to hear that the wine community was willing to help out someone coming into it.
Oh, yeah.
Who, started in his basement.
The thing that, really separates what I do in my other business versus this is a super fraternal business. And I think that even across the industry, but certainly in my myopic perspective, in Paso, we all, for the most part, take the perspective that helping each other elevates everybody else, right? What was it? The
rising tide.
Rising tide, right? And I really believe that. I mean, there's always some level of competition, but if you're a serious winemaker, a serious grower, or both, and you call people who are serious about the business, they know you are, and they're going to be more helpful, willing to help you. And that's what's really cool about this business, is it's the fraternal nature of it. It's a family. It's pretty cool.
Well, you have made a great contribution to the wine family.
Oh, well, I'm just nicking the surface, but
your wines are delicious. And to find you, again, you're west of Paso Robles.
West of Paso Robles.
Yep, on Chimney Rock Road.
On Chimney Rock Road, a very twisty, curvy, but beautiful drive.
And if you're coming from Paso and you see the Adelaida Schoolhouse, we overlook it. You'll just look past it and you'll see a very modern house and winery. And
do people need an appointment to taste here?
It depends. We do 2 tastings. We do regular tastings Friday through Sunday, 11 to 5. And if you want to have what we call a reserve tasting, which is our latest releases and allocated wines, we do that by appointment. It's a little higher cost, but it's a wonderful experience because you get me to tell you every little anal detail of what I do, as long as you'll listen. And any groups of 6 or larger, we do require an appointment. Mm-hmm. So we try to really create an intimate environment here when people visit.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful, so worth the drive.
Yeah.
And people can find you on the internet. Those not in California and not visiting Paso Robles can find you on the internet.
Or if they're in Finland.
Oh, there you go. Well, yeah, soon to be all over Finland. Yeah, so, yes.
Well, cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Well, Kukkula Winery is such a beautiful place. It's hard for us to leave.
It absolutely is. It's spectacular out here. The beautiful rolling hills, just a wonderful, gorgeous spot, and the wines are just as lovely.
They're wonderful. It is a bit of a drive, we will warn you. There's a lot of twists and turns, but it is worth the journey.
It is. And that's going to do it for our show today. Thanks for coming along for the ride.
Absolutely. If you really like what we're doing, please share it with your friends and family. And to be sure that you don't miss another one of our super fun episodes, go to our website, sipsiphooraipodcast.com, and subscribe to the podcast. That way, you'll automatically know when we drop an episode.
Absolutely. Get on board. Follow us on the Gram and Facebook, and be sure to tag us at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast. And that way we can stay in touch with you. Thanks for coming along, and we'll see you again next time. Sip Sip Hooray.